Thanks for staying with us. As the excitement around the build-up to Johannesburg's Art Fair season in September 2019 begins, Johannesburg will host a new alternative art fair focusing on contemporary art from the African continent. LATITUDES Art Fair is a new platform for African art, and it aims to expand and strengthen audiences for contemporary African art and to create a richer understanding of African cultural production globally. For more on this, I'm joined by founders of that fair, Nokwazi Zimu, as well as Makgati Molebatsi. Thanks both so much for your time on SABC News. You're a woman-owned, 50% black-funded art fair, and you're taking on a giant in the South African art scene.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nzinga, for having us here. It's quite nerve-wracking, I must tell you. We sat and thought about it and saw an opportunity. You know, when they say when life serves you lemons, take those lemons and make lemonade. So basically, that's how this art fair came about. We looked at the lemons that we had and we said, what are we going to do about this? And we saw ample opportunity. We felt that there's such a huge space still in Johannesburg, having only one art fair, being the Joburg Art Fair. And we felt with them moving to the elite and higher end positioning, then this is definitely the time for us to launch and be a more diverse type of an art fair and be the first woman-owned art fair and the first 50% black-owned art fair, or black co-founded art fair, if you like. And yeah, it's Makgati, myself, and Lucy McGarry and Anthea Bias.
Okay, so you've spoken about how it's inclusive and it's reaching out to a wider audience. Then the fair is in the middle of Sandton. How do we balance those two objectives?
Well, I mean, middle of Sandton, does that mean that it is beyond the reach of what you would call your masses? No, it is not. I mean, have you looked at Sandton on a Saturday or Sunday? You know, you get many people coming into that, and ease of getting into Sandton is very accessible. So I do not think that that will be a disadvantage to us. Mm-hmm. It is not.
Okay. So your aim as well is to be more inclusive, not only to people who are going there and maybe are not the high-end buyers, but yes, people who want to be able to buy art and can't afford perhaps a Kentridge or a Nelson Makamo. But then on the other side as well, artists who are emerging will have a space in Sandton. Explain to us how that will work.
Absolutely. So with the collector or the art lover or enthusiast, what we want to have basically is open the space. I remember before I got into the art scene myself, I felt like there was this glass dome that covers the art industry. Like I'm standing out there, I'm like, oh, I want to be in there, I want to be in there the whole time, but I just couldn't get in. So what we're trying to do is break that glass, that dome, and open a door for people that are entry-level collectors, that are entry-level enthusiasts, along with the artists of the same level, so that they can grow together, because there is an elite that is growing right now. So we can't just say the elite, and be focusing on the old elite. We're growing a new audience together with their new artists. Because whether we like it or not, an artist starts somewhere. Some of the collections that the big collectors have, they bought when the artists were only at entry level.
What's the importance of cultivating that market, and what's the importance of people buying art, being interested in art and being around it?
Well, if you look, I mean, as we said, we are cultivating art enthusiasts. We are cultivating appreciation, and appreciation leads to acquisition. You know, so that is what is important about this. And the other thing is that we need patronage of our own artists. You know, we have a growing number of artists. A lot of our children, a lot of our offspring are being interested in going for that. You know, before 1994, before, you know, the pre-democracy, what you would find is that there were very few institutions that offered that academically, you know, and I mean, fine art was a very, very, you know, foreign thing to black students. But today we have more of our people going into that, and we have more curators. So that will increase the interest, because that is what people are going to be talking about in our families, and that will lead to enthusiasm and increased audiences that go to not to museums and then to our art fairs.
What's the importance of transforming the art sector, and is there a need to transform, and at what level?
I think there's a huge need to transform the art sector. I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying no one has been trying. I have seen people trying over the years, but there seems to be resistance somehow. I'm not sure where this resistance comes from, and I'm hoping with Latitudes we can then find a way of breaking this glass dome that we have seen over the past years. I'm hoping that we will be a more inclusive space that makes people feel as if they're part of this culture of art that is South African, that they understand it. Because it breaks my heart when I go home to Soweto and I start talking about certain artists, or my child asks me and says, "Mommy, we were learning about Picasso today. How come we don't have any artists with our names?" And I'm saying, "No, but we do, honey." And then the other day I was telling him about a young artist, Banele Khoza, and I said, "He even has the same name as you." And he says, "Really, Mommy? I didn't even know that." You know, so I feel that we need to do that. Makgati touched on education. At Latitudes, we're trying also to educate. It's not just about having the space there, but as we build up to the art fair, we're having classes, we're having children's workshops, we're having all of these things where we are having people that are growing with an understanding, including myself, of the art industry itself, what an artist is about, what makes an artist, what makes art, and how far one can go with art itself.
When you talk about Latitudes Fair, there's an emphasis on the fact that it's women-owned, that there's black women in there. What's the importance of that in the art scene in South Africa now? And do you think that you're going to be met with resistance, not only this year, but in the years to come?
I do not think so, because there's an increase, as I said. We've got black curators, and so I don't think that will be met with this resistance. I think there will be more appreciation, and for this women-owned, 50% black, founded art fair. Because I think Johannesburg has been waiting for that. It has been seeing, the other art fair is now 11 years old, and during all that time, it has been trying to cultivate more black people interested in that. And I think with people seeing that the ownership is women, is 50% black founded, and I don't think there will be any resistance. I think there's going to be excitement about this entry of a new art fair into the marketplace.
And it's very interesting that you chose around the same time. What's the rationale behind that?
It's the art fair season. There's nothing wrong with that, and also it simply shows that the industry is growing, and there's space for a fair that is owned by women, a fair that is more diverse and more international and more inclusive compared to the other fair.
Yeah.
So,
and I also think that it increases the cake. I don't think that it is as small as cake where we will all be trying to eat within that cake. I think it increases that. If you look at, because the excitement of the fair season will now give space to our fair. If you look at Frieze in London, and there are fairs around it that happen because everybody is in London at that time. So all the other fairs seize that opportunity to have those audiences spread over to their own fairs.
I know it's a discussion you and I have had before, but I just want to talk about why people should care about art. You've spoken about that glass dome, that perceived glass dome, and the chasm between what people think art is and what it actually is. Why should people care about it in South Africa now? Why is art important?
Because art is culture. It is, we shouldn't look at art only as an acquisition object. It's also an appreciation and an educational object, and reflecting your own culture. Some art is not necessarily to be acquired. It is just to be educational. It is just to reflect the time that we're living in. And this is why, together with art fairs, there is a necessity for people to go into museums to understand who they are. you know.
Yeah, it's probably about knowing who you are, exactly, knowing your history, knowing your culture, having that footing, the stable footing. Don't have to go to Europe to understand where you come from. You go to Europe, you've got someone who's got Senzeni Mahasela all over the walls, Sindika Dagolo, who raves about these artists that are from home. We want to own that artwork ourselves. We want to care about it. We want to know who these artists are and what they mean. For me, when I buy a piece of art, it's not about how pretty it looks or what kind of paint was used or what lines the artist was following. It's about the message it gives me, the story behind the art piece itself. You buy a Mary Sibande, you look at the Sophie series, the blue and white series. It takes me back. My grandmother was a Zionist woman, blue and white, and she was a maid herself. That already is a story that resonates with me. It may not be exactly the same story as she's telling. And I think that's what we look at. You look at Nelson Makam, who's got these jolly little kids. It's such a different story from seeing the sad African woman or sad African child who's constantly dirty or crying. He's a happy and excited. So it tells a different story all the time.
Thanks both so much for your time on SABC News.